Chapter 177 Righteous and Evil of the Cultivation World. This treasure was refined from the essence of the 5 metals and was meant to be integrated with this man's creation, the incorporeal evasion technique. It could arrive without a shadow and leave without a trace. As it could injure without form, it was truly difficult to deal with. It was said that it would even give nascent soul experts a grand headache. It was one of the treasures this senior relied on to oppress others. Even if they obtained the formless needle treasure talisman, on the mere basis of its miraculous invisibility, it could be considered a wondrous life-saving treasure. At the very least, core formation experts would be unable to cope with this strange object. Good, this one will wager in accordance to this exalted senior's words. After slight consideration, the Taoist priest agreed after feeling that the terms were acceptable. As for martial ancestor Li, with the thought of reaping huge benefits, he clenched his teeth and tacitly agreed. Pa! Pa! The 3 mutually struck their palms with each other, making their wager official. Senior, why have you come here? Could it be that the masked moon sex group consists of only you? Once the 3 separated, the Taoist priest suddenly thought of something and asked this question. I've brought a group, so the sect can feel at ease. The one leading the sect is that girl Ni Chan. I've merely come along to see whether or not there were any new ferocious young people in any of the other sects, the esteemed senior unhappily remarked after widely opening his eyes. Now that I've taken a look, they're pretty much the same. I reckon that the truly talented disciples in Marshall Nephew's sect would hardly be put forward. They would certainly be treated like treasures. Think about it. Without experiencing dangerous encounters, what's the use if they are talented? The moment they meet nefarious entities, they will be slaughtered like sheep. This senior seemed to greatly disapprove of the sect's way of handling things and wore a "you are all gravely mistaken" expression. When martial ancestor Li and the Taoist priest heard this, their faces didn't change in the slightest, but they were cursing silently in their hearts. This old eccentric actually says this easily. How would our sects casually bring our more talented disciples to participate in this trial by fire where they're almost certain to die? Do you think of us as idiots? They could go elsewhere to get experience, why insist in coming to this bloody restricted area? Naturally, these words could only be smothered in their bellies. They absolutely wouldn't dare to speak this in front of this man. Otherwise, wouldn't that just be bringing misfortune upon themselves? The Taoist priest and martial ancestor were rather tactful. Naturally, this further proved that in the cultivation world, those with large fists have simple reasoning. The disciples of the 2 sects clearly heard about the matter of the trio's wager on the trip to the forbidden area and could not help but burst into an uproar. Their expressions had nothing in common and appeared extremely odd. Naturally, no one would be so stupid to directly denounce the 3, so they could only keep their resentment to themselves. Otherwise, with the mere movement of their pinky, the lives of these novice cultivators were forfeit. When martial ancestor Li saw those 2 depart, he turned around to sweep his face across the Yellow Maple Valley's disciples. Then he coldly said a few words that caused Han Li and the others to be stunned. I am aware that you feel our wager on your lives seems to hold you in far too little regard. Were it someone else, perhaps they would provide an excuse, but I have always disdained this. I will clearly tell you that this is the true appearance and cruel nature of the cultivation world. This can be considered a few words of advice. Hear this well. In the world of cultivation, regardless of whether you're a righteous person from a prestigious clan or an evil fiend who abandoned the Tao, advancement is an act against nature where only the strong survive. However, those who are righteous progress slowly, and their success will flow naturally where conditions are correct. Their cultivation arts are relatively gentle. But they often act villainously under the false pretense of exterminating evil and defending the Tao, mostly hypocrites that feign righteousness. Those demonic sects that follow the Tao of devils make every effort to greatly advance their magic power, blindly pursuing formidable, mighty cultivation arts and fiercely cultivating malicious amount of yin energy. They are also disliked for being opportunistic. Although they claim to be following their heart's desires and displaying their true nature, In reality, their actions gradually become more extreme as they progress in cultivation. They lose their human nature until they become bloodthirsty and cruel. However, regardless of whether the sect lies on the righteous or evil side, it is only a matter of how they are portrayed. In reality, both follow the rule that the weak are prey to the strong. Us cultivators are the same as the mortals of the secular world. Experts on the higher realm of cultivation look upon low-level cultivators as powerless insects. They are unworthy of being spoken to and will die in a single strike. This is a normal matter. With this said, Martial Ancestor Li paused. His voice seemed to hold some disapproval toward these so-called righteous and evil sects. This attitude caused the disciples to feel somewhat confused. A somewhat bold disciple could not help but ask, "Martial Ancestor, is our Yellow Maple Valley righteous or villainous?" We are neither righteous nor villainous. The other 6 sects are also the same," he replied with a cold smile. "You are all young, and the time since you've entered the sect is short. That is why you haven't yet been informed of the history of the state of Yue's cultivation world. 1,000 years ago, our state of Yue was like the other regions, an opposition between righteousness and evil. During that time, the 7 great sects were small sects that had yet to enter the fray. In order to survive, they were forced to become righteous or evil according to the way the wind blew. If a side's strength was slightly greater, those small sects would join that side. These great righteous and evil sects fundamentally looked down upon them with contempt. However, later the righteous and evil sides broke out into an extremely desperate battle that exhausted all of their experts. After that battle, their strength was greatly depleted, so they no longer had the strength to suppress Yellow Maple Valley along with the other small sects. After a period of time, our 7 great sects managed to join hands and surpass the 2 sides, thoroughly extinguishing their ideology and avoiding future problems. The current cultivation arts you've learned are actually the spoils of war from back then. This was the period when our 7 great sects established ourselves as the lone great powers in the state of Yue. If there are still righteous or evil sects that wish to invade this place, our 7 sects will immediately join hands and repel them. We will absolutely prevent them from establishing themselves. As a result, the cultivation arts our 7 great sects teach include those from both righteous and evil sects along with a few unique ones as well. In the dispute, we could be regarded as neutral. When Martial Ancestor Li said this, he couldn't help but wear a content expression. Previously, you all continuously and bitterly cultivated in the valley. Whenever you left the sect mountains, you've all traveled around the large area of the state of Yue but have never met with the true world of cultivation, nor have yet experienced the dark and bloody side of the cultivation world. However, during earlier periods, on the sides of righteousness and evil existed the 5 great cultivation schools side by side: Buddhist, Taoist, Confucian, devilish, and demonic. The degree of chaos during that time exceeds your very imagination, making it seem as if pillaging and genocide were simply common occurrences. With this said, his expression grew completely solemn, but soon after his face relaxed. Then he coldly added, "All right, I'm going to wake you all up a bit to prevent you all from becoming arrogant. Remember that in the world of cultivation, if your strength does not equal another's, don't blindly speak respectful words. This so-called respect can only be given to those experts far above the rest, otherwise you'll be bringing about your own destruction." I wonder how many of you will live to truly comprehend these words after a few days. When Han Li and the other disciples had heard this, they were already at a loss for words and were exceptionally shocked. The words spoken to these disciples were far too surprising. You should have heard the wager we made previously. This particular wager, however, is quite significant to me. So long as I win the wager, I definitely won't treat you all unfairly. Those disciples who help me win will be heavily rewarded. As for the one who contributes the most, I will personally take him as a disciple after he reaches foundation establishment. The Yellow Maple Valley's disciples who still hadn't comprehended the sincere advice were suddenly excited by the grand promise following it. To be able to become an apprentice to a core formation expert, those who received this privilege were but a few tens. This was a golden opportunity that only occurred every 1,000 years. Seeing the crowd before him excited with eagerness in each of their eyes, martial ancestor Li faintly smiled and was greatly satisfied. So long as he won this wager, to remember 3 or 4 disciples' names was a trivial matter. At most he would simply settle down in some area and pass down some superficial cultivation arts. Wasn't that matter easily resolved?